Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
And you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where that funny thing has happened again. The rest of the world is laughing and complaining, and I'm wondering whether Jeremy Corbyn actually has a bit of a point when he suggests that companies should do more to stop, and I quote, early evening socialisation, or going for a pint, as you and I have routinely called it, because it does somehow discriminate against working mums. We'll explore that story a little further today, and I'm drawn towards a tale that may make you groan when I mention it. If it makes you groan loud enough for me to hear from here, I'll find something else to talk about. But at the moment, I find the idea of 57% of people polled being in favour of a legal ban on the so-called burqa absolutely fascinating. If you don't, of course, then we need to rejig the running order. 4 after 10, top of the morning to you. Let's start with the doctors. Yesterday, very gratifyingly, it's always a bit of a risk when you stick your finger, you lick your finger and stick it in the air in the hope of identifying the direction in which the wind is blowing, and doctors did come to our aid, or relevantly experienced people. It's fair to say that the notion of the 7-day NHS as it stands is opposed by almost everybody, but that doesn't mean that almost everybody in the medical profession will be in favour of the current strike plan, the 5-day stoppage unfolding on 3 separate occasions and designed, you have to presume, to fairly robust, if you like, disruption. You have to presume, otherwise it won't achieve anything. I want to read you a letter that was published in the Daily Telegraph today. I really want to, but I can't find it. Here it is. The BMA has to, this is from a doctor in Kent. The BMA has to be very careful how it handles matters. The government will undoubtedly spin the debate as a case of greedy junior doctors simply wanting more pay. The real problem is that junior doctors' morale is at rock bottom. The reasons are an unsustainable workload, too few doctors, an increasing blame culture, that's interesting, and an increasingly elderly population with complex health needs. The NHS is on its knees, and many believe it will implode this winter. The government is happy for strikes to happen. When public support for doctors ebbs away, it can blame doctors for the failure of the NHS. This from a doctor, remember? And of course, if the failure of the NHS does become a thing in the coming months or years, I don't think you need to be Karl Marx to suggest that increased privatisation might be just around the corner. Now, if you think I've gone peak commie already, think back to the news bulletin you just heard a minute ago about Southern Rail. Southern Rail currently running a service into London Bridge in the city where I live that is absolutely chronic. Absolutely chronic, failing utterly to keep staff on side and passengers transported. But the news bulletin today reported their profits. There you go. So it's an absolute shambles, and it's only part of their company, but it's an absolute shambles that is blighting the lives of ordinary working people, but they're still pulling money out of it at a rate of knots. And that is the kind of thing that frightens me. It makes me wonder sometimes whether we really do need a little boy at the back of the crowd pointing out that the Emperor is in fact naked. So if this doctor in the Telegraph today is right, the NHS is on its knees and many believe it will implode this winter. The government is happy for strikes to happen. When public support for doctors ebbs away, it can blame doctors for the failure of the NHS. And that leads us inevitably to the question of whether or not public support is going to ebb away. And that is a really interesting question. I think, rather gratifyingly, our suggestion yesterday that leaving the BMA and the politicians out of this debate, out of this argument, gives you a slightly better chance of seeing where the truth lies, because it's a bit like focusing on the ball, actually watching the ball instead of the players. You know, the doctors in this case are the ball. The BMA are pushing them in one direction, the government is pushing them in the other. But yesterday, if you pardon the expression, we focused almost entirely on balls. Today, spectators. Today it's the punters, it's the patients, it's you and me, effectively. The phone lines are not closed, of course, to doctors any more than they're closed to Jeremy Hunt. But as a patient, I suspect that public support is going to ebb away. I don't know how you sustain it. in the face of such uniform hostility from the usual suspects. The very simple suggestion here, of course, is that patients are a little bit gullible, patients are a little bit susceptible, patients are a little bit easy to manipulate. And I don't think that's necessarily fair, but we're human beings and we will eventually buckle under the weight, won't we, of assault. Why would you not listen to the doctors? And then, having used the railways as an example of what might be around the corner, if I'd said to you 30 years ago that we will end up in a place in Britain where teachers are regarded pretty badly by the general public, if I'd said to you 30 years ago that teachers will be sneered at by the parents of the children that they teach. See, when the teachers go on strike, I always find it incredible that people who turn up at 10 to 9 on a Monday morning to entrust their child's future and safety to another adult will not trust that adult when they turn around and say, we need your help, we need your support. But that's where we are now. This curious conflagration of public sector workers, public service, denigration over the years. People even sneer at that phrase now, public sector. It's doctors, nurses and teachers and firefighters and police officers. But if I were to subscribe to any conspiracy theory, and I don't yet, it would be to this one. It would be to the notion that we have been routinely and quite successfully manipulated into a position where we now as a population look askance at the people who are actually trying to help us. There's another line, and another letter to the Telegraph talking, or it might be an article in one of the papers today, talking about the impossibility for someone like Jeremy Hunt to even begin to get their head around the idea of choosing a path in life because you have somewhere inside a desire to help others. Now, that may not be fair, that may be grossly unfair to him, but you go through public school, you go to Oxford or Cambridge, you go into PR or the media or business, you go into politics. It's like a sort of effortless progression through the ranks of life. And to have decided at the age of 18, 19, 20 that actually you possibly want to pursue a career that puts other people ahead of your own pursuit of power or wealth. And I guess a lot of people in the political class, particularly perhaps in the Conservative Party, find that very hard to understand. This, of course, is where we are now. The doctors are going to go on a strike that is probably going to harm patients. I know they're assuring us it won't, and I know I know some of the official spokespeople are assuring us it won't. And of course they point to the fact that the 2-day-long strikes didn't do any harm. But in a way, both sides need some damage to be done by this industrial action. The doctors almost need some disruption to be caused in order to make the government back off, and the government almost needs some disruption to be caused in order to make the public change sides. And I want you to tell me what you think is going to happen. 0345 60 60 973. Since 2012, I think some 70%, certainly a significant percentage of certain types of contract in the health service have gone to the private sector. But it doesn't necessarily add weight to the fear that there's a plan around the corner to do more privatisation to the NHS. All right, Jeremy Hunt wrote an article or a chapter in a book many years ago in which he said it was desirable and inevitable, but people are allowed to change their mind. I just want you to tell me whether or not you think your support for the doctors will be sustained, because I've got a horrible feeling it won't. I think the biggest surprises I've experienced doing this for a living involve teachers and firefighters. It's odd, isn't it? You get so used to things. It's like you grow a calcified layer of skin. You just get so used to things. And of course, the right wing routinely beats up on trade unions. And of course, workers' rights are being turned increasingly into something that we can only dream of as we ply our trade for Deliveroo or Uber or Hermes or one of these other companies that doesn't actually employ us but treats us as if they do and needs to be able to exploit us in order to keep their profits rolling in. And their business model disruption seems to be the new way to make a fortune. You find something that's been run quite well and you come in and find a way to take money out of it, whether you're talking about the black cab drivers or takeaway delivery food or couriers. Just don't give the workers any rights. That's the thing. Don't give the workers any rights. And the big surprise I've had doing this for a living is the ease with which the British public has been persuaded to turn on firefighters, which was probably the first thing I ever got my knickers in an almighty twist about on this programme. We had an astonishing encounter with Boris Johnson's sort of chief panjandrum, in which he started sort of jumping up and down. I said on air, I might just repeat on air something you've said to me off air about the mayor's attitude to the fire engines, and the fellow went nuts. It was quite surreal. It was a real sort of dawn for me. I thought, crikey, they really do lie through their teeth, and then tell the public something completely different. And the public then take against the firefighters. So firefighters and teachers, I've got a horrible feeling that if the British public can be persuaded that firefighters and teachers are somehow not to be sympathised with and supported, the doctors are in for a very, very rude awakening. At least that's what I think. I could be wrong. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Okay, so the only way you make sense of the situation at the moment is to recognise that the people who effectively said that this whole industrial action was about money and used the BMA to prove it have now completely failed to explain why the doctors haven't followed the BMA's guidance, the original guidance on the new contract. And the answer to that, as we know, is because for the doctors this is about patient safety. For everybody else it's about money. For you it's about what? 0345 6060 973. It's a strange question to ask, but it's actually the most important one of all. Do you think your support for striking doctors can be sustained throughout the current plans for industrial action? I don't think it can. I don't think it will be. I think you're going to have a death or a tragedy that was avoidable, and it's going to be used on the front page, and it's going to be a name that's used like a cudgel to hit the doctors over the head again and again and again. And the columnists and the commentators and the pundits and the politicians will all be lining up to say Jennifer's ear or whatever it might be, and that will be used again and again and again to demonise and denigrate the doctors until they're cowed into submission. So we're left now with two choices. You either want a cowed workforce in the NHS with plummeting morale, massive number of people threatening to leave, comparable numbers already leaving, okay? That's your choice. Cowed, defeated and demoralised, or what? Listened to. And again, I find myself utterly befuddled on a scale that almost defies description, to think of my neighbours, my colleagues, my friends, my family being persuaded by self-serving, profit-chasing personalities not to trust the doctors. Even when today some of the Royal Colleges and the senior associations come out and describe the industrial action as disproportionate, they're not saying they approve of the new contract. They're just saying, oh crikey, you might be taking a bit of a sledgehammer to this walnut when really we might be able to open it with a nutcracker. We've tried the nutcracker. That was the 2-day strike. So now they're reaching for the sledgehammer. And well, look, I'll level with you now before the phone lines. I'll hand it over to you. I think they're going to lose. 0345 6060 973. And the reason for that is pretty simple. When was the last time the Daily Mail or the Sun lost? From the election of Margaret Thatcher to the election of Tony Blair to the decision to leave the European Union. When was the last time the British public actually went against the wishes of Rupert Murdoch and the Daily Mail on a national scale? Firefighters, scumbags. Teachers, scumbags. EU, rubbish. Blair, brilliant. Thatcher, great. Doctors, nah. Sodom. I'm a bit pessimistic today. I hope you can cheer me up. The time is 10:16. They believe the contract will make us all less safe. Will we believe them when they tell us that? I think at the moment we mostly do. But will our support for their actions sustain when these 5-day strikes kick in? That's a long time. And the consultants and senior doctors, roughly half of the profession who stepped up to the plate and filled in, well, they may struggle to do so again on that sort of scale. The number you need is 0345 6060 973. Vince is in Bexley Heath. Vince, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. It's basically about the doctor strike at the moment, and what you're saying. I was listening quite intently what you're saying about how the government may spin and turn people against the public services and everyone, really. When you consider they've turned the public against us, the firefighters, against teachers, and now they're trying to turn it against the doctors. And all we really want, and all they want, is a contract they've signed to be honoured and not ripped up and torn up and thrown in the bin.
Which is, oddly enough, which is also what the black cab drivers of London sort of want with regard to the nonsense that using Uber doesn't involve hailing another vehicle in a way that only black cabs used to be allowed to do. But what I find odd, Vince, you ring up as a former firefighter. I don't want to sound rude, and I'm not talking about you. I'm talking more about the cab drivers, actually. When you come out in support for them because of what you've just described, the fundamental principle of a contract that should be honoured, why don't people see it the same when the boot's on someone else's foot? So why don't the cab drivers realise that the teachers and the firefighters and the doctors are actually in a similar boat? Is it because of the private-public sector divide?
I think at the moment, people, the public is sort of pretty much in the dark over how much privatisation is being forced onto all the public services through the back door. I mean, the fire service, that's slowly been, virtually everything of fire services now being privatised bit by bit by bit. Obviously, the NHS has been, as we probably know, when all the business with the train gate with Jeremy Corbyn was going on in the background, they slipped in the privatisation bill for the NHS. Then no one will know about it. And the government seems to have well, as we know, they've got...
Well, I don't know about that. Tell me, as a firefighter, how do you feel the public shift? Because the firefighters come out on strike, generally, given that you're the fellas and the women who will run into burning buildings to rescue people who are running out, generally, you'd think that would be a shoo-in for public support. I always remember the newspaper column I read by a friend, actually. She's older than me, but she's a friend of mine, and I read it, and I could not actually believe my eyes. I remember thinking, what? These are firefighters. How does it feel to be on the actual receiving end of that shift in support, that shift in loyalty?
Well, it's quite shocking, actually, because when we was out in strike, the public support was quite overwhelming at the fire stations. People come and support us, the usual two things that go past, people shouting out, good luck, that sort of stuff. Now, 1 out of every 50 people said, get back to work, you lazy buggers.
Sure.
But then they obviously believe what they read in the Sun.
And then it shifts, because at the moment you'll find 1 in 50 who will say the same thing to the doctors. Oh, it's all about money. It's all about. But it shifts slowly, and it ends up being a situation in which someone like Boris Johnson knows he can win.
Yeah, because as you know, that they can. Well, let's say in conspiracy theory, they control the press. The press print what they want, and people read the press and believe it. Unfortunately, the British public forget far too easily about what's happened in the past to other services, how things have been treated, the way the police have been treated, and now slowly, bit by bit, the NHS is being torn to pieces so that all the private companies can leap in and take it over.
And yet you could, then we need a doctor to tell us why they're, if you like, in a way, contributing to the process, potentially. Vince, thank you. That line in the Telegraph letter, only a letter. I say only a letter. It's kind of the point of what I do every day by opening up the phone lines and the normal people rather than the paid pundits and agitators. This doctor says the NHS is on its knees. Many believe it will implode this winter. The government is happy for strikes to happen. When public support for doctors ebbs away, it can blame doctors for the failure of the NHS. 10:24 is the time. And just to refer briefly to the firefighters, you see there's a tweet here. I don't like these tweets. This is from Wenger out, please. An Arsenal fan, I suspect. I think you give the British public a bit too much credit, to be honest. They are very gullible and believe most things tabloids say. There's one thing wrong with that tweet, Messert. I think you need to rephrase it. I think you give the British public a bit too much credit, to be honest. We are very gullible and believe most things the tabloids say. In the tabloids, you will see, when there is industrial action on the agenda or on the horizon, that's when you get the stories about 6 fire engines being sent to rescue cat from tree. And I guess it is a little patronising and condescending of me to say I just don't understand why people lap it up so enthusiastically. It's the great mystery of the modern age, right? Why would you lap up the lies that actually damage your own life? A cowed, demoralised, unhappy workforce in the NHS is bad news for everybody, except people looking to make a few quid out of it. Nick's in Stoke Newington. Nick, what would you like to say?
Hello. I want to say that I think the public would support the junior doctors. I've no doubt about that if they were allowed to be informed of the facts. But I think when you've got such a slick PR machine with the government so close to the relevant, the Daily Mail, the Sun, putting out things like record funding going into the NHS, when the facts are being screamed by the Commonwealth Fund, the OECD, the King's Fund, even the data.
I'm presuming that you're not fully qualified to talk about this because you're not a columnist on a newspaper or a gob on a stick. You're probably some sort of doctor or something, are you?
I'm a left-wing militant doctor.
Yeah, you bloody doctors. What do they know about the NHS?
Yeah.
Seriously, get me a Sun columnist up next. I don't want to listen to doctors about what's going on in the NHS. Why the hell would anybody want to do that?
It's got to the stage where you're right. People will come to believe that doctors are in it for themselves. I mean, it's like, get a grip. Doctors have always been some of the hardest working people and have worked the longest hours for the least kind of comfort, if you like, in their jobs. We don't have an easy job, but we do it because we want to do it. It's a vocational job. You do it because you want to do it, not because you want to make a fortune.
It's not sackcloth and ashes either. I mean, but the interplay between training and reward is actually probably skewed less than other professions. The amount of training you have to do, and then you find the few people who are earning mega bucks. Most GPs, most hospital doctors, of course, are not. You're right. It's not a lifestyle you choose for fame and fortune.
And those are the headlines you see.
Always. Well, it's like the firefighter who lived in Ibiza. Do you remember that? During the last strike, they found one fellow who sometimes commuted from Ibiza because he'd have 4 days on, 4 days off, which meant over the summer it was worthwhile hopping on an EasyJet. And then suddenly it's on the front of a newspaper and everybody thinks that all firefighters are so underworked that they can all afford to commute to Pasha and Shoom every weekend.
Yeah, well, I earn $36,000 a year, which isn't massive for what I do.
Champagne socialist.
My pay hasn't risen for 11 years.
Politics of envy.
Effectively, I've taken, a 25% pay cut over 11 years, whatever that adds up to, taking into account inflation. But, the real point is, obviously, it's not money. It's that doctors are desperate. The NHS is on its knees. Rota gaps are the key word for this contract. Sean Linton was absolutely right. The thing we need to talk about now is the desperate shortage of nurses.
But you're not going to. You can't. We can't. We're going to talk about greed of doctors, greed and militancy of doctors. We're not going to talk. Unless you fire, and presumably we can wheel someone out a little bit later who'll say it's all the fault of immigration. It's got nothing to do with underfunding and understaffing. It's all the fault of uncontrolled mass immigration.
Well, that's been played out. Of course it has. The Daily Mail headline saying that immigrants are robbing the NHS of our care. But we need more people like you on Newsnight, getting relevant people like Sean Linton in to talk about 1,000 extra nurses since 2010. We've had no extra GPs since 2009.
And people are retiring, and GPs in particular are retiring early now because the job has become unbearable.
And under the new STP, which was referred to earlier, in our area, they're planning to cut the number of GPs by 50% up to 2020. Backfilling that with IT and what's called self-care. The cuts are unbelievable and people just sort of don't want to believe it. And while you've got Theresa May going, he's a great health secretary, record funding, more doctors than ever, people kind of sit back and go, well, perhaps the doctors are in it for themselves. I think we need to break the link between the government and the press. That would be the first thing, really.
Well, good luck with that. And okay, it's not just the press. Broadcast media plays a very rich part in this process as well of persuading the public to vote to punch themselves in the face. But Nick's only a doctor, remember, so don't listen to him. Find a journalist to trust instead.
James O'Brien on LBC.
33 minutes after 10. Hi, James. Although it's not directly doctor-related, I just wanted to tell you that a few months ago, my daughter, who's nearly 3, spotted a fireman in our local fast food restaurant. Absolutely starstruck. She said hello to him, and his response was so sad. I got to this point in the story, and I thought it would be like the time Ian Botham told me to F off when I chased him onto the pitch at cricket during rain-stop play. He wanted to get to the pavilion. I went, can I have your autograph? But thankfully, no. The firefighter responded like this. He said, I'm glad someone likes us. It was absolutely terrible, James. I tried to reassure him that no matter what the media say, you have a lot of respect and support. I just think it's relevant to your discussion. Doctors should know they have more support than they realise and must keep on fighting. Well, Madeline, your optimism is admirable, but I don't know if you're a clairvoyant. Dave has tweeted at Mr. James O.B. with a counterpoint to that. He goes, when you get screwed over at your work, you don't mind others getting screwed over. That's the problem that the doctors will discover with support. And I think there is some truth in that, actually. I think there is some truth in that. I think the idea that you don't have protection at work, your pension has been scuppered, your employment rights have been undermined, your right to tribunal if things don't go well has been diluted, or all of our employment rights during this great period of economic boom. Somehow the ordinary workers have come out of it with less than they went into it. Social mobility is lower than it was 40 years ago. 40 years ago, you were more likely to move up the ladder in this country than you are now. But combination of kowtowing, forelock tugging, and cap doffing to the barons, the mill owners and master sweeps of the 19th century, and now the sort of newspaper owners and the hedge fund managers, and we just slightly fetishize them and think they're wonderful. You hear some journalists interview them and their voice will change. Oh, hello, sir. Yes. Oh, hello, sir. Yes, of course. I'm chief executive of... Oh, sir. Yeah, well, yeah, great. And combine that with the demonisation of immigrants, you've got a absolutely perfect scenario in which to screw everybody while blaming it on anyone except those who are responsible. And if they can do it to firefighters and teachers, they can do it to doctors. 0345 60 60973. I go to the phones. I've got a couple free. Be quick on this. I want you to cheer me up today. I want you to give me, if you will, the reason to be cheerful. I've just had a very, very long message from a friend who's listening. He's a TV producer, and he is furious with me. I'll read you that in a minute as well. When people like you start writing off an action before it even happens, you are following the playbook. Well, I'm not optimistic because of what I've seen happen before, but I'd like to be. Lizzie's in Bromley. Lizzie, what can you tell us?
Hello.
Hello.
I don't know I'm going to cheer you up.
Oh, God.
I'm a teacher, and I think I do support the doctors 100%. I think it's awful what's going on. I think we're being completely fed misinformation by the government. But I'm completely pessimistic because I've been in teaching for 9 years now, and I have slowly but surely watched my job disintegrate. I love my job. I love being with children. I went into teaching. I wanted to be a teacher from about the age of 5, but my job it's heartbreaking to see what the government.
Do you know? I just mentioned the text I got off a friend who's a TV producer and who's cross with me. His wife's a teacher, and he's written exactly that. He said, "I've seen what they've done to my wife's profession and pension. We as journalists have to see through the smoke and mirrors and call out the falsehoods." But I mean, some people did that with the teachers.
I wish it happened more because it's devastating. I feel the pressure not to strike now because I have parents.
Yeah.
I have the most supportive parents who are great, and I mean, I'm very lucky at the school I've worked in. I've worked there for years. But your teachers now are viewed as glorified childcare.
Yeah.
And if we want to strike, it's the impact on other people's lives. And yes, we understand that we don't want to take a day off. It makes our lives more difficult to take a day off. We will happily go in when we're ill. We will happily not go to doctors. We will book everything around school time. We know we're very lucky to get holiday when we do. But if our pensions have been ruined, and that also isn't the only reason teachers are striking. That's the only thing that's reported on. We're also striking because the paperwork is insane. I hand in 20 pages of planning for 1 week. I had children who are bright, intelligent children falling to bits during the SATs test this year and crying and coming to me crying their eyes out because the pressure of the government of these new SATs tests.
Sorry to interrupt you, Lizzie.
No, it's fine.
I hear exactly what you're telling me, but I'm interested in you as well, personally rather than professionally. How do you rationalise this? I mean, you went into teaching presumably under the illusion that you would be greeted with open arms and regarded as one of the most respected and esteemed members of society. And indeed, 30, 40 years ago, you would have been, but you're not now. How do you rationalise it?
No, I rationalise it because I feel very lucky at the school I work at. I've got we're a very tiny school. Undoubtedly it will change in the future, I know, but I'm clinging to the fact that we're a one-form entry school. I've got very, very supportive parents who are very kind to me and who know me as a person because I've been there for so long now, and I see the impact on children every day. There was a little girl who left last year who I've known since reception, and she had a few learning needs, and she was crying on the last day because she used to come and speak to me every morning. And that's how you keep going. You keep going because you have children who make your life 1,000 times better and who just come in every day and you're feeling awful. You've read the news in the morning or turned on BBC or turned on the news, Sky News, and been called useless because you haven't got enough children to level 6 as it used to be. And you just go and you go, right, okay, well, you have to shut it out. And that's why teachers now, we don't strike as much because quite frankly, there's no point. It doesn't work. Nothing works. Nothing works. Your pay gets cut. You don't get pay rises. The paperwork increases. And the poor children, we are in this country, we have such a good education system, but we're churning out children who are nervous wrecks because all we're doing is over over-assessing them. And this is what's going to happen to the NHS. I wish it didn't. That's why I support the doctors 100%, but I just can't see how it's going to work. I wish it did. I wish there was a government. I wish there was
But if they can do it, to the teachers, why on earth would they not be able to do it to the doctors?
Why can't they do it to doctors? And it's just, public service is such a bad place to be, because you are in a service. I give 1,000% every single day that I'm in my job to other people, and I will try my very best to do as much for every child that comes across my path as possible. And 90% of parents, 99% of parents, especially at the school I work in, are so supportive. But for every good day you have, there's also a day where you just get told you're rubbish, and that's what's going to happen with the doctors. And they're like, I had a class of 25 people on my PGCE, and I think only about 3 or 4 of us are still in teaching. Everyone has quit.
And you hear the same with doctors. But what are they going to do, just out of interest? What are they going to do instead?
I have no idea. This is what worries me, and it will devastate people, because you go into teaching and medicine, and you go into that because it is a vocation. It's something you wanted to do since you were a kid, and it's something that you love, and it's something that you really want to make a difference in the world. And you don't get paid very much. You know, it's not like doctors, junior doctors or teachers are on 90 grand a year and swanning around living in...
Well, even senior doctors and senior teachers often on that. What did he describe himself as? The militant socialist doctor on just before the news. On a salary, he's fully qualified GP on about 36,000. Lizzie, thank you. You're right, you didn't cheer me up, but I enjoyed talking to you. 10:41 is the time. How do you swim against a tide like this? And no one's come up with an answer yet to the last time in living memory that the British public did the opposite of what the Daily Mail and the Sun told them to, from the election of Tony Blair right through to the referendum. When's the last time that they said, get lost, Rupert? 0345 60 60973 is the number that you need. I guess I'm just sort of talking myself out now of replacing Eamon Holmes as the host of the breakfast show on Sky News. I should have said, sir. Say, get lost, sir, to Rupert Murdoch. John's in St Albans. John, what would you like to say?
Hiya. I've worked inside the NHS, and I've had my family have service from the NHS, so I see this from two sides. And what I see here is that we already have a 7-day service from the NHS. When my child had seizures, pretty much like Ivan Cameron did, I was lucky that they didn't die. It was, there will be deaths this week, there are deaths today, there'll be deaths tomorrow, and they will be blamed on these doctors. But these doctors are asking to not be worked to death so they don't make more mistakes that do cause unnecessary deaths. And what we have at the moment is we have turkeys that don't vote for Christmas. We have a massive top-heavy management, and if you really wanted to make a massive difference to the NHS as a government, what you would do is you would first of all break all the PFI contracts, because half of them they don't function, and you would...
So that's a Labour legacy, just in case anybody thinks this is a sort of party political position. Quite the opposite.
Yeah, and we also...
Who told us to elect Tony Blair? He got the support,
we have 415 trusts, 415 boards of directors, 415 PR managers. It's just a whole bunch of unnecessary, top-heavy stuff that could be done centrally at the Department of Health. You don't, when you're prioritising diseases and things, you don't prioritise arthritis over cancer. So those decisions are being made over and over again. You've got people watching people watching people, and what they've been trying to do in this campaign is to devalue the skill and besmirch the name of junior doctors, and we have to support them. We have to, no matter what.
Well, you really, no matter what?
No matter what, because what they're talking about, they're on the front line. They already are worked to death. So if you take this through, what's going to happen is they're going to make mistakes, and there'll be more unnecessary deaths. They already are. Well,
this for me is the fulcrum that brooks very little criticism. The simple tension. Why? Because you sit there and why are they trying to do that? Well, the old Jeremy Paxman school of interviewing. Why is this so and so lying to me? But I look at it, I think, why are they doing that? Why are they telling us it's about pay when all of the doctors tell me that it isn't about pay? And then you come down with the very simple answer that if the public can be persuaded that it's all about pay, they won't side with the doctors.
This is it. It's all propaganda. And the thing is that, I was in a ward about 3 months ago, and I was sleeping next to my child while they were recovering. And in the middle of the night, there was a child whose lungs were being cleared out. There were 12 clinicians around them, treating them at 3 o'clock in the morning. Don't tell me we don't have a 7-day NHS. That was a Sunday night, Monday morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. Don't tell me we don't have a 7-day NHS. When you need the resource, they find it. And this is the point. And it's the problem is that if we keep chipping away at the nurses and the doctors and the people that keep this running, we won't have an NHS. And that's what their ultimate goal is. They want to make it so bad. They want to turn us from the Olympics, where we loved it, where we cherished it, to something we despise, and then they can go and tell us that we need to pay 400% more to privatise it.
Or take out insurance individually in order to ensure that we get looked after in health. John, thank you. You took us right up to 10:45. The number you need to join in, and you can grab the phone line that John's just vacated, is 0345 6060973. It's not even controversial, is it, really? It's simply a case of whether or not you believe the politicians and journalists telling you it's all about money, or the doctors telling you it isn't. And I find it staggering that so many people would choose to believe the politicians and journalists. Just look at London Bridge railway station. Privatise something. Public come to the back of the queue. Public are the last people to... Why do we care about the passengers? They've got to pay. Don't care about the patients. They've got nowhere else to go. They get sick. They've got to come to our hospitals. They can't go anywhere else. So we want a piece of the action. Who are you going to believe? Journalists and politicians, or doctors? And when senior doctors, or some senior doctors, of course, you again have a manipulative headline here, describe the strike action as disproportionate, they're not describing the cause as wrong. They're saying, oh, God, do you really have to go this far? Look, 2 days were fine, but 5 days, this could be horrible. Come on, guys, think it through. And they reply by saying, well, we don't want to go on strike. We don't want to go on strike. We want the health secretary to rip up this stupid contract that his own department has found is undeliverable. His own department. That was the document leaked last week, saying that we don't have the money or the bodies to implement a 7-day NHS. And of course, as John points out, we've already got a 7-day NHS. What we don't have is electives, surgeries, appointments on Saturdays and Sundays. And part of the reason we don't have that, well, actually, part of the reason why we can't have that at the moment is because we haven't filled our rotas on Monday to Friday either. I mean, it's so blindingly obvious that all you've got in response, when you say, how can people not see this clearly? Tug the forelock, doff the cap. Very well, sir. Whatever you say, sir. Yes, sir. I'm on the side of the owners, even when their foot is on my throat.
This is LBC with James O'Brien.
10:50 is the time, and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. It's a strange and slightly well, grim conversation. This it's not. We're not having a shout or a fight. If you think the doctors are swinging the lead or having a laugh, and you don't trust any of the ones that have told you why they're going on strike, then I respect your position. God knows the amount of effort that's been put into pushing you into that position. It'd be a miracle if it didn't work, wouldn't it? But quite how people can be persuaded to act against their own interests is astonishing. Down with doctors. Yeah, they're right old scumbags, like those firefighters. At least when it's anti-immigration nonsense that we're being spoon-fed, you can understand the ancient appetites which it feeds. You know, the fear of strangers fundamentally used to be a survival instinct, and somewhere deep inside us, it's still presumably hardwired into the less developed intellect. It's a fear of the unknown. I guess we've all got it, actually. It's a little unfair to say the less developed intellect. When you're presented with a food you haven't tried for the first time, you don't wolf it down with alacrity. You're a little bit, until you've tasted it, then you make a decision, usually. But how can doctors now be alongside firefighters and teachers as a section of society that I fear, I pray I'm wrong, we're about to chalk up on the enemy side, enemies of the popular, the doctors, the teachers, the firefighters, the police we've talked about. You name it, you hate it. Susan's in Watford. Susan, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello, James.
Hello, Susan.
I'm so depressed because...
Oh, don't be. You're supposed to be cheering me up.
No, I think, well, I would beg the doctors. I think they're playing into Jeremy Hunt's hands. I think his PR team would be ecstatic that they're going on strike. I'd beg them to cancel the strikes and say to Jeremy Hunt, we'll sign the contract. Let him call his bluff, because that means the public will be thinking, oh, they've signed, we couldn't have Saturday and Sundays, or we could have our clinics on a Saturday and Sunday. Their expectation is completely unfounded, because they could go in any Saturday or Sunday thinking they're going to have an operation, an elective operation.
I don't know that you can. I don't know that you can call bluffs on.
Because he doesn't want them to sign it, because he knows it's all a load of rubbish. It's just an idea to turn the public and the doctors are playing straight into his hands. If anyone is mistaken and thinks Jeremy Hunt cares about the safety of people, he shut so many A&Es, and he's shutting Ealing A&E. It's catastrophe. People will not be able to get to the hospital in time. A child with asthma attack.
But the problem is with
20 minutes on the journey.
No, I hear you, Susan. The problem with your plan is that the effort will be put in to persuading the public when things go wrong that it's the fault of the doctors.
I know, that's why I don't want them to strike.
No. If they do what you say, they sign up for this thing that they say is unsafe, and then they're proved right, they get the blame. It's a bit like the referendum vote, where when things go south, everyone's going to blame it on those who didn't want to leave in the first place.
Jeremy Hunt will not let that it's purely done for this purpose. He knows that is unworkable. As I say, it'll be proved once and for all. The public will...
Yes, but when it's proved once and for all, look at how Britain works. The doctors will get the blame, not the government that forced, well, in their view, that forced them into the industrial action. Here you go, Susan, to cheer us both up. This is lovely. Lizzie, the earlier caller, who's a teacher. My little girl starts reception today, James. I really hope she gets a teacher that cares as much as your caller, Lizzie, clearly does. Lizzie, I hope you're still listening. Sean's in Wallingham. Sean, what would you like to say?
Yeah, James, hello. This business that you've been talking about, the power of the press, and when will it end, and when will, people sort of stand up to it? Well, the short answer is probably, and I'm meant to be cheering you up, when there's a snowball's chance in hell. I think if you look at what happened when there was the News of the World phone hacking scandal, if people genuinely realise, and again, as an educated person like myself, you try not to be patronising, that is part of a wider group, News International, and Sky Sports, it's paying money into the same old guy's pocket. If the Daily Mail, for example, were discovered to have been phone hacking on a wide scale, or the owner was discovered to be a paedophile, I'm not saying he is, by the way, or the same were to happen with The Sun, that is the point at which those organisations will close.
No, you've seen the allegations that have been levelled against Roger Ailes in America, the sexual assault and sexual harassment allegations that have been levelled against the man who used to run Fox News. He's pretty much signing up to help Trump. These people are too powerful to be brought down.
I think, in a way, part of it is a sense in this country. I mean, I'm sort of got one foot in the Republic of Ireland, where my parents are from, and so on. And actually, a similar thing sort of happens there. But I do think in this country in particular, there's a little bit of almost masochism that people sort of want to be almost
angry
put in their place. Yeah, well, they certainly want to be angry. This business about gold-plated, for example, the same will be applied to any public sector pension. The truth is, doctors and teachers, look at the stats, die very quickly after they retire, generally, particularly if you go to 65, probably because of the stress they've had in their lives. That is the truth.
And also, suicide rates among doctors are among the highest in the country. What do you do? Because you seem teacher, or?
Yes, well, believe it or not, I just... After 9 years, it's interesting listening to the young lady who was on before, who's done 9 years in teaching. I did 9 years. Now, I'll be completely honest with you, I was in private schools the whole of that time, which has its own challenges.
Yes.
They model it more or less on the state sector, but you don't quite get the behavioural issues. What you do get is absolute nightmarish parents. And I know most of my friends who are teachers are actually in the public sector.
Well, that's parents that care too much, you would argue, by nightmarish, as opposed to parents who don't care at all, which is a problem that a lot of people, perhaps in the state sector, face. Expectations.
Well, yes, it's not. I don't think anybody. If I had a young relative now who's 22, I mean, I'm in my early 40s, but I wouldn't recommend anyone. Put it this way: if you do go into teaching, medicine, I can't really speak of, but I think you're talking about 10 years worth maximum you can do without doing your health long-term damage. I would have had a heart attack if I'd carried on in teaching. I think I really do.
Well, I'm glad you're out of it in that case, but of course on other levels, it's a great shame that you felt you had to be. 10:57 is the time. Rob's been in touch to say my dad completely embodies the points you're making, James. He was in hospital on Sunday, treated by them, out on Monday, but he's not on the side of the doctors. He can't really explain what it's all about or what it is he's angry about. He just knows he is. We're in the dark, really, unless you go out to find the information, and this is exactly what they want. And also, don't forget the denigration of information now that you're seeing on both sides of the Atlantic. It's not information. These are not facts. This is evidence that you're pursuing a biased narrative. It's not actually statistical evidence or fact. 350 million quid on the side of a bus. That's a fact. Linda's in Hemel Hempstead. Linda, what would you like to say?
Hi, you've run out of time now. But
I have, but go on.
I don't know. Just to say, I've just spent 2 days in A&E just recently, and if you've any idea, this is in Watford, the condition they work under, the staff, there's no air conditioning, there's no windows, they're working their butts off. The ambulance crews are fantastic. They stay with the patients. They're doing triage. They're getting drips in the corridors. The condition they're in, and I know from working in admin, the money that's wasted is horrendous. You know, they have these bonding weekends at expensive colleges, and they're all going on staff training. There's so much.
They need a bit. They need a bit of training, but I think you're right. I guess centralisation and pooling of resources and just a lot more efficiency in the way these places are run. That does historically hold true across the public sector. And you're right to make the point. The danger is, of course, that these points get magnified into reasons for dismantling rather than reasons for improving. And then you're back to that Chomsky line that I got tired of repeating to you last year about how you actually do create an atmosphere for privatisation. You devalue and demoralise until the public think that the problem is with the institution and the people that run it rather than with the politicians that have allowed it to happen. And once the public have been successfully persuaded that the institution needs to be dismantled and reconstituted, the private sector steps in to do it. The usual suspects make a fortune, and the politicians who created the scenario in the first place usually end up with a seat on the board. And that's just truth. You know, that's not even an opinion. That's just truth. But that, right now, in Britain, at this point in our history, that would make me public enemy number one for your average tabloid columnist. Simply for telling the truth. Strange times indeed.